I used to think loyalty and hard work would always pay off. That if I just kept pushing, just kept showing up and giving my all, someone would notice. Someone would say, thank you. Or maybe even, you've earned this. But I was wrong. So, painfully wrong. For the past 6 years, I worked almost 80 hours a week at our family business. I skipped vacations, missed birthdays, and barely saw my friends. I poured everything into the company, helping it survive one crisis after another. When the pandemic hit, I was the one who worked late nights to keep our clients from jumping ship. When we almost lost our biggest account last year, I flew across the country with less than a day's notice to smooth things over. I was all in, not for the paycheck, because I wasn't getting one. I did it for the family. I believe this was my legacy too. That one day, all this effort would mean something. Then I found out the truth. It started with an email. A legal document accidentally CC'd to me. I almost deleted it, thinking it wasn't for me, but something made me click. That's when I saw it. The business had already been legally transferred. To my sister, Sarah. Full ownership. No mention of me. No heads up. No conversation. Just done. Quietly. Like I didn't exist. Sarah, who had only been involved in the company for a year, part-time, and usually worked from home. Sarah, who always had other priorities, traveling, hosting parties, finding herself. She never put in the grind like I did. But apparently, none of that mattered. I was just the placeholder. The reliable one they could burn out. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just stopped. Cold turkey. No more early mornings. No more unpaid overtime. No more sacrificing myself for a family that saw me as disposable. I walked away without a fight, because fighting would have meant I still cared. And honestly, something inside me broke that day. It only took a week before the cracks started to show. My dad called, sounding frantic. Our biggest client, the one I personally built a relationship with, was threatening to cancel their contract. My dad didn't say sorry. He didn't even ask how I was. He just launched into how I needed to fix it. Like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. So I said, calmly, let Sarah handle it. She's the heir after all. There was silence on the line. And for the first time, I realized they never expected me to walk away. They thought I'd just keep taking it. Now they're scrambling. And I'm finally watching from the outside. But here's the thing. They still don't know everything. Because what I did next, that's the part no one saw coming. When I said, let Sarah handle it, I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I meant it completely. I had already accepted that I wasn't part of the plan anymore. And if they thought she could run the company better than me, then fine. Let's see how that works out. But deep down, I knew they were in trouble. The client they were about to lose? I had spent years nurturing that relationship. I remembered their kids' birthdays. I knew their favorite coffee orders. I stayed up late during their product launches, helping with things that technically weren't even our responsibility. It wasn't just business. It was personal. That's how I kept them loyal all those years. That's something Sarah would never understand. She thought being professional meant keeping things cold and transactional. But in this industry, relationships matter. Trust matters. And she hadn't earned any of it. After my dad's call, I didn't hear from anyone for 3 days. No apology. No explanation. It was like they didn't even care why I walked away. Or maybe they thought I'd cool off and come crawling back. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. And I waited. By the 4th day, I got a text from my mom. Can we talk? Just that. No context. No warmth. I ignored it. It's hard to explain what it feels like when your own family treats you like a tool. Like you're only useful when you're fixing things for them. They never once asked how I felt. They never said thank you. It was just expectation after expectation. And now that I wasn't there to hold the pieces together, everything was falling apart. I started hearing things through mutual contacts. Apparently, Sarah had tried to step in and talk to the client herself, but it didn't go well. She didn't know the history. She didn't even understand half of the services we promised them. She talked in vague business jargon and couldn't answer their direct questions. The meeting ended early, and for what I heard, the client was deeply concerned and already looking at competitors. Part of me felt bad, not for Sarah, but for the business, for the people I used to work with, the employees who relied on that account to keep their departments running. I never wanted them to suffer. But at the same time, I couldn't save them without destroying myself all over again. I started thinking about all the sacrifices I made. The nights I slept on the office couch. The holidays I spent alone. The times I told myself it was all going to be worth it. That one day, the business would be mine too. That I was building something for my future. And now I was watching it slip away like none of it mattered. But even as the chaos started to build, my family still hadn't realized just how far I'd stepped back. Because the real storm, it hadn't even started yet. I found myself replaying old conversations in my head. Little moments that didn't mean much before suddenly felt heavy. Like that one dinner almost a year ago when Dad mentioned wanting to simplify things for the future. I thought he meant retirement planning. I didn't realize he already had a plan, just one that didn't include me. The worst part wasn't that they chose Sarah. It was that they never gave me a chance. No discussion, no warning, just silence. Like my years of loyalty meant nothing. And Sarah? She didn't even seem surprised when I found out. That stung the most. She acted like she expected it all along. Like I was just the workhorse, the one who would always be there no matter what. But I wasn't anymore. I started getting messages from coworkers, people I had mentored, worked late nights with, even covered for when they had family emergencies. They didn't know the full story, just that I was suddenly gone and the office vibe had shifted. Apparently, Sarah had brought in a friend of hers as some kind of consultant, and morale had tanked. One of the junior staff texted me, "Are you okay? Things are weird here without you." I didn't reply. What could I say? I wasn't okay. I was angry, hurt, confused. And the longer I stayed silent, the more that silence became power. Let them feel the gap I left behind. Meanwhile, I started to piece together another detail that kept nagging at me. The timing. The legal transfer of the business happened right after I wrapped up a huge project that brought in one of our biggest clients. A contract that basically secured our company's finances for the next 2 years. That wasn't a coincidence. They waited until I sealed the deal, then gave everything to Sarah. It wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. I wasn't just excluded. I was used. At this point, I started talking to a lawyer. Not because I wanted to sue, but because I wanted to understand what, if anything, I was legally owed. I wasn't on paper as a partner, but there were emails, messages, internal memos, all showing I was treated as one. Given responsibilities. Promised things. My lawyer didn't make any promises, but he said, "This isn't as simple as they think it is." That gave me a strange sense of calm. Not revenge, just clarity. But I wasn't the only one waking up. My aunt, Dad's sister, called me out of the blue. She's always been kind to me, though not involved in the business. She said she heard what happened and wanted to check in. After a long pause, she said, "You know, this isn't the first time your parents have handled things this way." I asked what she meant, but she went quiet, then just said, "Be careful. They protect Sarah differently than they ever protected you." And with that, a whole new layer of the story started to unfold, one I never even knew existed. After that call with my aunt, something shifted in me. I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. They protect Sarah differently. What did that even mean? I started remembering little things from our childhood, things I'd buried or brushed off, like how Sarah always got away with stuff. Skipping school, spending money that wasn't hers, getting caught in lies. There were never consequences. Me? I got the lectures, the guilt, the responsibility. Always the one to set the example. It wasn't just favoritism. It was something deeper, something more deliberate. Around that time, I heard through a mutual friend that Sarah had been trying to pitch herself to other clients as the new face of the company. She was dropping my name from presentations, acting like she'd built everything from scratch. But the problem was, she didn't know the details. She didn't know the systems I built, the long-term strategies I mapped out, or even the real reasons our major accounts stayed loyal. She thought she could wear the crown without earning it. One client emailed me directly, not through the company, to me. She said she was concerned about the leadership transition and wanted to know if I was still involved. I stared at the screen for a long time. That email hit different. It meant they noticed. It meant the illusion was cracking. But I didn't reply. Not yet. I was watching things unravel from a distance. Quietly. Strategically. And then something strange happened. I started getting messages from Sarah. First, it was a short, passive-aggressive text. "Did you tell any clients you're no longer working here?" I ignored it. 2 days later, another one. "I'm trying to clean up the mess you left behind. Would be nice if you could at least be professional." No apology. No ownership. Just deflection. It was classic Sarah. When things went wrong, she spun it so she looked like the victim. And somehow, I was the villain now. Not the one who'd been blindsided. Not the one who worked years unpaid, only to be erased. What bothered me most was how she was still trying to use me, even now. And while all this was happening, my lawyer kept digging. He found something in the old email chains, something I hadn't noticed before. A reference to a meeting I wasn't invited to. A meeting that discussed future ownership structure months before I even signed that major client. That means they already knew. They had already decided. Everything I did after that point wasn't to build my future. It was just to help hand the company over to her. And suddenly, I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt played. The pieces were coming together now. But there were still questions. Why the secrecy? Why so much effort to keep me in the dark? And most of all, what else were they hiding? I couldn't stop thinking about that meeting I was never invited to. The one where they talked about future ownership. The more I looked at the timeline, the clearer it became. They had made their decision long before I ever saw it coming. Every late night, every saved client, every sacrifice, it was all done under a lie. And I didn't just feel used, I felt humiliated. They smiled in my face while quietly moving me out of the picture. And then, the final crack. My lawyer forwarded me a document he'd found, an internal memo Sarah had signed just weeks after the ownership transfer. It outlined plans to restructure the company and listed me, by name, as non-essential. They hadn't just replaced me. They erased me. Officially. That night, I sat in the dark with my phone in my hand, staring at Sarah's name in my contacts. My fingers hovered over the call button, not because I wanted to talk. I just wanted to hear her voice shake when she realized I knew everything. But I didn't call. Instead, I forwarded the memo, anonymously, to one of our biggest clients, the one who had reached out to me earlier. No message, no explanation, just the document. Within hours, my dad called again. This time, he didn't sound angry. He sounded terrified. "Did you do something?" he asked. I said nothing. They're threatening to pull out. This could ruin everything. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed calm. "Then maybe you should talk to Sarah. She's the one who said I was non-essential, right?" There was silence. Everything was starting to unravel. And now, they knew I wasn't just walking away quietly. I was done being the pawn. But they still had no idea what was coming next. Just when I thought I had them cornered, another piece of the puzzle dropped. And this one changed everything. My lawyer called me late one evening, his voice low and serious. "There's something you need to see," he said. He sent over a scanned copy of an old contract. At first, it looked like one of the standard client agreements I used to manage. But then I saw it, my signature, or what looked like my signature. I froze. I never signed that document. It was tied to a deal made 2 years ago with a small vendor we eventually cut ties with. But the contract had been altered badly. It included terms we never agreed to, and it locked the company into a financial obligation that still hadn't been paid off. The catch? The fake signature made it look like I had approved it. And now that I was gone, someone had quietly forwarded this file to legal, trying to pin it on me. I knew immediately who had the most to gain by doing this. Sarah. If the memo didn't take me down, this would be her backup plan. A way to discredit me, ruin my reputation, maybe even push legal consequences my way. She wasn't just trying to replace me anymore. She was trying to bury me. I felt my stomach twist. This wasn't just family betrayal now. This was calculated. And suddenly, the game had changed again. Because if she was willing to forge a signature and lie to legal, then who else had she lied to? And more importantly, how far was she willing to go to keep the company and keep me silent? Now, I wasn't just fighting for recognition. I was fighting to protect everything I'd built from being destroyed. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the forged contract, every line of it screaming betrayal. I knew if I stayed quiet, they'd pin it all on me. And if I fought back, it would get ugly. But I wasn't about to let Sarah rewrite the story. Not after everything I gave. The next morning, I showed up at the office. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just walked in. Familiar faces turned, shocked to see me. Some smiled. Some looked nervous. Sarah was in the conference room with Dad and a few board members. I didn't knock. I opened the door and stepped in like I never left. Dad stood up immediately. "What are you doing here?" I held up the contract. "We need to talk. Now." Sarah went pale. I laid everything out in front of them. The forged signature. The memo calling me non-essential. The client fallout. And most importantly, the timeline that proved I was pushed out with full intention. I watched as Sarah tried to talk her way out, but her voice cracked. Her explanations didn't add up. One of the board members asked, "Did you really sign this on behalf of the company?" She hesitated for half a second too long. I could see the doubt spreading across the room. These people may have liked the image she sold, but now they were seeing the truth. That she was reckless, dishonest, and far from ready to lead. Dad rubbed his eyes. "We'll take care of this internally." "No," I said firmly. "You won't sweep this under the rug. You've done enough of that already. I'm not asking to come back. I'm asking for what I earned. My share, my credit, my name cleared." For a moment, no one spoke. Then, one of the board members leaned forward. "If you're willing to provide your records, we can open a formal review. This affects the company's future. We need transparency." Sarah exploded. "You're just bitter because I got the business. You always thought you were better than me." I looked her straight in the eye. "No, Sarah. I thought we were a team. I just didn't know you were playing a different game." The board decided to suspend her pending investigation. The contract was handed over to legal. I walked out of that room, feeling both exhausted and strangely free. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of the company or the lies that came with it. But the final twist came a week later. My aunt called again. She found something in my grandfather's records, an old will, one that had been quietly pushed aside years ago. It listed the original intention for the family business, shared ownership between siblings based on contribution and integrity. My name was the only one written in the final clause. Turns out, this wasn't Sarah's company to inherit. It was mine all along. I stared at the old will in silence, my aunt's voice still echoing through the phone. It was real, legal, and untouched since my grandfather passed. My name wasn't just a footnote. It was the closing word, the last instruction. He had seen something in me back then, long before I ever stepped foot in the office or stayed late to finish reports no one else cared about. He must have known that someday the truth would need to be protected. When I brought the will to my lawyer, he sat back impressed. "This changes everything," he said. "If this had been acknowledged when it should have, you would have had control a long time ago." Part of me wanted to be angry. All those years I spent thinking I was second best, working in the background while Sarah was given every opportunity, I could have had a say, a voice, a rightful place. But instead of letting the bitterness stay, I chose to focus on what I could do now. After the investigation, Sarah stepped down quietly. My dad never apologized directly, but the way he avoided eye contact the last time we met told me everything. Maybe he thought he was doing the right thing. Maybe he convinced himself that Sarah needed the business more than I did. But whatever story he told himself didn't erase what happened. I didn't take over the company. Not completely. I chose to restructure it, bring in people who'd been overlooked for too long. I made sure the team that stayed loyal got the recognition they deserved. The toxic patterns? I broke them. I made space for collaboration, not competition. And for the first time, the business felt like something worth fighting for, not just surviving in. As for Sarah, she disappeared from the industry for a while. Word got around. People talked, but I didn't chase revenge. I didn't need to. The truth had already spoken. One afternoon, I got a message from one of our longtime clients, the one who almost pulled out. She wrote, "It's good to see the company finally has someone with vision and heart at the top. I'm glad you didn't walk away." I stared at that message for a long time, because I almost did, and maybe I would have if I hadn't trusted my gut. If I hadn't paid attention to the details, the forged contract, the timeline, the silence from people who claimed to care. All of it had led to this. A messy, painful, but necessary reckoning. Looking back, I don't regret the years I gave. I regret not asking more questions, not speaking up sooner. But now I know better. Now I'm better. And the next time someone tries to write me out of my own story, they'll learn the hard way. I've already taken a pen back.